So recently I went back on the Whatever podcast and it was a 4-hour debate just focused on abortion. So I wanted to break it down for you how it went. It was a bit chaotic. It was 4 hours. It was very loosely structured. And I found out just shortly before the debate that it would be, instead of a panel of a lot of people in support of abortion and opposed to it, that it would be one pro-choicer whose name is Destiny. He's a popular YouTuber named Destiny or Steven. He goes by the name Destiny in opposition to myself. And then I would be teamed up with a debate partner who had a very different debate style than I do and different arguments. So what ended up happening is there were a lot of interruptions, not only between me and my partner, who were having different approaches to the debate, as well as from the opposition. And I think despite 4 hours, there was a good presentation of the pro-life position, but in addition, a lot of chaos. With all of the chaos that ensued, with all the interruptions, I wanted to break it down. What was the pro-abortion side? What was their position? What's the pro-life response? And then talk through what I see as the weaknesses in the pro-choice position during the debate. So Destiny's argument in the debate is effectively this, that if you have consciousness, if you're a human being with consciousness that's developed that, which you generally do according to him between 20 to 24 weeks of pregnancy, then you are a person. And if you are a person, then you get legal protection and you have human rights. So basically, personhood gives you your rights, and personhood is not all humans, it's humans starting at their consciousness. And he's opposed, therefore, to abortions after 20 weeks because he says roughly that's when a human gets consciousness and becomes a person. Let's hear him say this himself.
My basic stance is we try to figure out what is a person. What makes a person? Person is granted some positive, some negative rights by governments, and probably morally and ethically separate from governments, we also grant people some type of right. I don't believe that a person is a collection of cells. I don't believe that a person is just a body with a brain. I think that very specifically when we speak about a person, we speak about something that has the capacity to deploy a conscious experience, because that tends to be the thing that we're usually
that's a good.
Or whether somebody ought to be protected. When we say a person, we say who is suffering. We don't say what is suffering. When I try to think of abortion, I try to think of who is being harmed. I would say that for 20 to 24 weeks, that's about when the scientists say that the brain has all the parts necessary to begin communicating, to have conscious experience. That about at that point, there is some experience there that we can speak of as a who or as a person. But prior to that, first trimester, that really experience is not happening yet. So if you want to have an abortion, there is no who that's being harmed. There's just a what, which is whatever the body is up to that point. So generally, in pro-choice,
who versus what? Okay.
That's what we're protecting, because that's when we look to see when somebody's dead. So that's when we should see when somebody's alive.
So are you anti-abortion after 20 or 24 weeks?
Yeah, after 20 to 24 weeks.
And all abortions, anti-all abortions after 20 to 24 weeks?
With the obvious exceptions of like ectopic pregnancies or life of the mother or something like that being threatened, yeah.
By the way, it's kind of interesting here that he mentions ectopic pregnancies, because ectopic pregnancies happen before 20 weeks, so they would not be, I think, an exception for earlier term abortion, as he's sort of stating it here. They're happening in the earlier trimester, and the removal of a baby in an ectopic pregnancy is not an abortion procedure. It's not an abortion, because in that case the baby's in a hostile environment and cannot grow, cannot survive, and the ethical way is to remove part of the fallopian tube with the baby in it, because that would lead to the baby's death, to leave the baby there, and potentially the mother's death as well. So the pro-life side and actually the pro-abortion side agree that an ectopic pregnancy is not an abortion. Okay, so what I want to start here, that aside, what I want to start with here is where we actually agree. So there actually is some agreement here between the pro-life position and Destiny's position. I want to call those out. This, by the way, is not true for all people who are pro-abortion. Some pro-abortion folks are for abortion for any reason, through all months of pregnancy at any time. That's not Destiny's position. He takes a more limited position. So where we agree, first of all, is that abortion should be illegal after 20 weeks. Totally illegal. Pro-life side 100% believes that, and it appears that Destiny believes that too. So it sounds like Destiny and our side is opposed to the Democratic Party's platform, which is that abortion should be permitted through all 9 months of pregnancy for any reason. In addition, later in the debate at one point, Destiny says that bodily autonomy is a bad argument for the pro-choice side. He says that bodily autonomy does not give you the right to kill another human being. And I thought that was really compelling, because that's certainly agreed. We agree with that on the pro-life side, that your bodily autonomy, which you do possess to a degree, doesn't give you license to kill another body inside your body when you're pregnant or to kill your offspring as a parent. So he basically says that the bodily autonomy argument does not apply if the human in the womb is a person. If the human in the womb is not a person, then whatever argument you want to use applies, because it doesn't matter. We can kill a pre-conscious human. Another place of common ground where Destiny and I agree is that it doesn't matter how the child is conceived, that child still deserves protection. Of course, when he says child, he means 20 weeks and onward. When I say child, I mean any human who's a child. But we agree that even in cases of rape and cases of sexual violence, it's not okay where a child is conceived. It's not okay to kill that baby who is conceived. And Destiny actually brought up the extreme circumstance of an 11-year-old rape survivor who was a victim of abuse and who's pregnant, who gets pregnant and is 22 weeks pregnant or whatever. And it's not okay, Destiny would say, to do an abortion on that baby. That baby is innocent. And even went as far as saying we should put the 11-year-old child in jail if she tries to pursue an abortion, which I thought was extreme for other reasons. We can get into that in a moment. But the point here is the pro-life and the pro-life side and Destiny's side agrees that no matter how the child is conceived, at least post 20 weeks, it's never justified to take that child's life.
The easiest in the world. No, you shouldn't be allowed abortion.
You should not what?
No, of course not. If it's already a baby, what if you have an abortion? Just because somebody's younger, it's going to be a dramatic inconvenience for 7-8 months or whatever.
Well, we agree on something.
Another place, surprisingly, where Destiny and I agree is in the case of criminal penalties for those that intentionally and willfully pursue abortion. So this is another clip that I want to share, but this is ultimately women who pursue abortion for their children with full agency and full knowledge. There's not coercion, there's not pressure, there's not ignorance, but they know what they're doing. They're going in with full intent to kill that child. Destiny and I are in agreement that there should be criminal penalties.
If you believe that abortion is murder, then a woman should be held morally responsible for a conspiracy to commit murder if she goes to an abortion clinic. Full stop. End of discussion. If you think abortion is murder, a woman going to get an abortion would be the same as a woman going to get a 1-year-old child killed. Abortion is murder for everybody involved, including the woman.
So there you can see Destiny is stating that yes, there should be criminal penalties for those that pursue abortion with full agency and full knowledge, and just because they're a woman doesn't mean they get off the hook for that. And another area where Destiny and I agree is that it's not okay to kill somebody because they might suffer in the future. And we both, an example of this is commonly used is foster care, that if someone is going to be in foster care, therefore they may suffer, then it would be better off if that person did not exist. It would be okay to kill that person before birth. That was another area where Destiny agreed that would be wrong.
For the pro-lifers, if an enslaved African-American woman in the 1800s unalive their fetus to protect the fetus from an enslaved life, would that be immoral?
So like a mercy killing, yeah, is the way that they would tell.
I think so, yeah.
And I think yes, killing someone because it's immoral. Killing someone because they are going to be enslaved or have a bad life is not right. We should instead work to free them and get them a better life instead of end their life.
Gotcha.
For the pro, no, this is argument. You can't make arguments in favor of abortion by killing people that might have lives. It's a stupid argument.
The value of going through what we just went through is argumentative clarity, because the reality is that Destiny seems to fully agree with the pro-life side if the baby is considered a person. And for him, that's again 20 to 24 weeks in utero. So for him, all the pro-life arguments apply, provided that the human is a person. So my debate with Destiny is over when a human being becomes a person. And the pro-life position is that all human beings are persons. We become human and persons at the moment of fertilization. Destiny's position is that it's at 20 weeks. Here's why his argument fails. Some of the arguments I'm going to share were made during the debate, so we're going to revisit them. And then I'm going to present some new arguments that I'm going to have more time and space to lay out and unpack here that we didn't have during the 4-hour debate. So Destiny's consistency about abortions being permitted before 20 weeks but not after leads to some very horrific conclusions. For example, at one point during the debate, Destiny said that it would be totally fine for somebody to have repeat abortions on a baby at 19 weeks, so 1 week before consciousness, for reasons of a sexual fetish. If consciousness is everything to you and anything you do before a child is conscious or a human is conscious in the womb is totally fine, would it be morally acceptable for somebody to, maybe there was like some fetish they had or something, intentionally get pregnant, and this has actually happened horribly, intentionally get pregnant to intentionally get abortions, but they're doing abortions at 19 weeks, so it's totally for and you're okay if that person gets abortion after abortion, totally morally, so I could have 30 abortions on 19 week babies.
Unlimited abortions, however many your body can produce.
Yep,
100%.
Well, let's try to get through some of these tests.
Okay, so here's why life doesn't begin at consciousness. There were two main moments in the debate that I think got him on this question. The main point at which I think I defeated his argument is on the precise definition of death, because he said that that death is the cessation of brain activity and therefore the beginning of life. Life meaning personhood for the human is the beginning of brain activity, which again he says between 20 and 24 weeks. Death is defined as a complete and irreversible cessation of brain activity.
Sure.
That's not the same. To say that that's the definition of death, if that's the definition of death, a child weeks before consciousness at 20 to 24 weeks in the womb doesn't have that definition of death. It's not
even have the brain
but it doesn't
activity.
have irreversible and it doesn't have a cessation of brain activity that will never come back. It's going to develop its brain activity.
Going to develop. I agree.
A child has brain
Will.
waves.
And once it develops, it takes care of a whole lot
Do you
about
see that even your definition of, well, I'm defining it the same way that death is defined, they're not the same. Do you see that?
No.
You don't see that.
You have a
That when
definition
you-
of going
when you-
broke is when you lose all of your money. But guess what? You're also broke if you don't have any money. You don't get any
He has a
money.
new definition of death.
Death can be ascertained by
What
the
a
complete and
oh my
irreversible cessation
god!
of brain
That was a fire analogy. Damn.
activity. So at that point, that's when maybe you take the patient off.
When you don't get any
He has a
money.
new definition of death.
Death can be ascertained by the complete and irreversible cessation of brain activity. So at that point, that's when maybe you take the patient off a coma, or you find your person, they have a heart attack, they died, they lost blood flow to their brain, and they have a complete and irreversible
Oh, I
cessation of
remember.
brain
Dude,
activity.
I read like papers for this. I think the longest one I read was, it was either like 70 pages or it was like 12 pages. I don't remember. Is Butler the one who wrote the long paper that everybody cites? She does the violin argument. She visits a bunch of stuff on this. And then there were a couple college papers or essays that I read on this. No, Thompson. It was Thompson. Judith Thompson. Okay, it was like 17 pages. Or however long this is. No, it was more than 17 pages. I think this is one of the most commonly cited, like, pro-choice arguments. 60 years old.
Activity, slowly they will have organ failure, their body's going to start to decay, they are dead. So this is not everything that death is, but this is how death can be determined. So death isn't determined ethically at the lack of consciousness, because you can have complete cessation of brain activity, but it's reversible, and so you're still alive, and it would be wrong for you to be killed. So the complete and irreversible cessation of brain activity does not describe preborn children, living preborn children. Preborn children are not corpses. A 19-week-old living fetus is not a corpse. They are a 19-week-old living fetus. Now, part of the debate we got into when it is ethical to remove a patient from life support. Now, this does not mean that we should keep coma patients alive indefinitely using extraordinary medical care. The reality is that depending on resources and depending on how extreme and how long the injury is, how extreme the injury is, and how long they've been in a coma, it can be ethical to remove a patient from life support. And this was also discussed in the debate. I talked about the difference between extraordinary and ordinary medical care. But there's a huge difference between withdrawing extraordinary medical care in a severe case versus removing natural care, ordinary care, and killing somebody. So we don't think someone's going to wake up from a coma, and if our resources are limited, it can be ethical to remove somebody from life support and allow them to naturally die. The removal of extraordinary medical care can be ethical and is different from killing somebody. If they're receiving natural care, like they're receiving food and water, it would be unethical to remove food and water from a patient, especially if that's not considered extraordinary care. The reality is, withholding extraordinary and artificial medical care is not direct and intentional killing. A child who's in the womb has the right to nourishment from his or her mother, and expelling that child prematurely from that mother's womb would be direct and intentional killing of that child, because receiving nourishment from your mother is not extraordinary and artificial medical care. The second argument where I think I showed his standard doesn't work was this.
For a sleeping person, when you go to sleep tonight, you have had a whole subjective experience. Right now, when you wake up, that experience will resume. But a baby has
But Destiny, what if I have amnesia and I don't remember anything? I'm like a brand new first moment of consciousness human being, and during
Wait,
my
maybe
coma,
yeah.
during my coma, I lose all memory, I lose all sense of my personhood, and when I emerge from my coma, I am like a brand new baby. Would it have been okay during that coma to kill me?
Oof, I would think a lot about that question.
Right? So if a person is guaranteed to wake up from their coma, and upon waking up, they're not going to have any of their memories, they're not going to have any of their sense of their personhood or self, would it be okay to kill them? Of course not. So here's a question that I would like to ask Destiny if we were to debate again. Is there any other case where you would be okay with killing someone who is guaranteed to have future consciousness? Because of course, that's the embryo or the fetus before 20 weeks. If not, and abortion according to him is totally unique, and so it doesn't fit the question I just asked, then it sounds like Destiny is just arguing that abortion is okay because abortion is okay. All right, here's some other arguments that I would make in hindsight if I were to debate Destiny again. So there's a lot going on in our brains besides our conscious experience. Think about the reality of the subconscious. And at any given moment when we're using our brains, we're only using a very small part of our brains. So the reality is there's a lot more to our experience or our reality as human beings than whatever is happening in our consciousness. And those other parts of our brain have a big impact on who we are beyond the part of our brain that we are actively using. And get this, brain waves are detectable in a preborn child, not at 20 weeks, but at 6 weeks from fertilization, incredibly early. So why do those brain waves not matter to Destiny? So all this is why you can't use level of consciousness or degree of brain development to prove personhood and to prove protection from lethal violence. I would have also distinguished between natural capacity and active capacity. This was sort of touched on in the debate, but there's never really time to flesh out the difference between these two ideas. Trent Horn also mentioned this in his response video. He used the terms natural and immediate capacity. But what's the difference? A natural capacity is something that I have because I'm going to develop it. You know, so I have a natural capacity as a human being for language, but when I'm a newborn, I don't have language yet, right? But if I have an active capacity, it means I develop that capacity and I'm using the capacity for language. Similarly, a fetus who is before 20 weeks has a natural capacity for consciousness. Given time and nourishment, they will experience consciousness, but before 20 weeks they don't, and then after 20 weeks they begin to have early stages of consciousness. A rock has neither natural or active capacity for consciousness. So if something has a natural capacity for something, then they possess it and they should be protected. There's another argument that I would have spent more time on with Destiny. So he has to clarify that it's not consciousness itself that makes personhood, but that it's the capacity for active consciousness that makes for personhood. This is an important distinction because the preborn child does have the capacity for consciousness that is.
What's your answer to that argument, though, the coma thing? There's not a good answer for it, and it's always going to be an optic cell. But the reality is one thing that people don't like to consider is your memory is actually probably a pretty significant part of your identity. And if you were able to completely wipe a person's memory over and over again, I think there are legitimate arguments to whether or not you fundamentally changed the person. But we can't do this. So this is like outside of the boundaries of like what humans are ordinarily like accessing, like an experience that people are like talking about or considering. My counter argument to this is if somebody's like, well, just because you wipe somebody's memory doesn't mean they're a different person or whatever, is there's an interesting essay I read a long time ago on the idea behind, let's say you've got somebody with absolute complete like Alzheimer's disease or some sort of like amnesia. Let's say that somebody commits a double homicide. Let's say that you lock them in prison, and then let's say they develop either severe Alzheimer's disease or some kind of severe amnesia, and they don't even remember having committed the crime. Is it ethical to keep them in prison? Are you even imprisoning the same person? I think there's a huge challenge there to a person's identity. I think intuitively you feel that a little bit like, that's kind of weird. Like a guy's like just sitting there locked in prison and he doesn't even really know why. And I think that's because I think your memory has something to do with your identity in a way that is more than what we kind of, in a way that's more that we cognitively think about. Another example of this would be, can you consent to something and then wipe your memory of the consent and then have that thing done to you? Does it count? Like, for instance, if somebody comes up to me and they're like, hey, tomorrow I'm going to punch you in the chest, okay? I'm just going to walk up and punch you, okay? Are you okay with that? And I'm like, sure. And they're like, okay, what if I'm going to punch you in the chest tomorrow, okay? But also tonight I'm going to mind wipe your memory of even talking about this or consenting to it. You're not even going to remember that you consented to it. It's like, okay, sure, I guess, yeah, fine, let's do it. Okay, all right, we're going to do it. If they wipe my memory of it, and then tomorrow I basically just walking around and some guy punches me in the chest, I'm like, whoa, dude, what the fuck? I'm like, no, you consented to it yesterday, but I wiped your memory of it. Something doesn't feel right about that. It doesn't feel like a contiguous experience, or it almost feels like a different person was consenting to the activity because you don't even have the memory of it. I think that I'm sure there are like philosophers or cognitive scientists or other people that deal more with identity that probably have more eloquent ways of addressing this, because I can only kind of like prod at intuitions, but it feels like that's a different person that would have been having that conversation if you don't even have memory of the thing happening, you know? People are bringing up Severance, and I don't know. I haven't watched it, so. Oh, fuck. They said no debate tonight. Fuck, I feel so bad. Rip. It's all our fault.
Is not active yet. It is natural, but later on will develop active consciousness. And of course, Destiny doesn't want to say, well, you go in and out of personhood when you go in and out of consciousness, right? He wants to say, well, provided you had this conscious experience before you go unconscious, then you are a person. However, this presents a problem for Destiny. What if someone temporarily loses their capacity for consciousness due to brain damage? And they also lose the underlying structure for consciousness. Because at one point, Destiny was saying, well, if someone's unconscious but they have the underlying structure for consciousness, then they're a person. But what if you're a person and you're 20-year-old, you lose your underlying structure for consciousness because of severe brain damage, but then through a healing process that your brain undergoes, or you get some medical technology, you heal that brain? Is it okay, Destiny, to kill that person when they have the severe brain damage and they lost that underlying capacity?
I think the most important question here is you have to ask, is it the same person? That's the first question. So if you're able to scoop out a part of a brain that allows a person to have a conscious experience, you scoop that part of the brain out and then you put it back in, okay? Or you put a different part in that gives them the ability to be conscious again. Is it the same person that exists afterwards? And I feel like the answer is no. When you start replacing parts of the brain, it feels like we're creating a different person. But then the question is if it's a different person, is there any time in between person A and person B existing? Is there any time in between where, neither person is present? And then if so, obviously that would be the time where you could theoretically terminate that body or whatever. I don't want to be killing somebody, but.
As you call it, for consciousness. Another point in the debate that I thought revealed the cruelty of the position of Destiny was when we discussed Baby Jackson. Baby Jackson had an extreme case of hydrocephalus, which led to him not being able to develop 80% of his brain. Doctors said that within weeks after he was developing as an embryo, his brain actually stopped developing. And yet Baby Jackson lived to be 5 years old, enjoyed the love and care of his parents, and is a beautiful human being and child that should not be killed. According to Destiny's position, it would be okay to kill Jackson at 3 years old or 4 years old because he lacks the brain capacity and is not fully a person. Okay, at another point in the debate, Destiny talks about moral intuition. He says generally we have a moral intuition for what it means to be a person. Moral intuition is simply too vague. We can't go off of our feelings to figure out whether or not it's okay to kill somebody. There has to be bright lines of morality about what is right and what is wrong. Morality is natural law, and natural law is the harmony between human nature and the external world, the natural order. It's conducive to certain universal goods, which are important for holistic human flourishing or happiness. The reality is human flourishing or happiness is actually not subjective, it is objective. Short-term pleasure can be subjective, but long-term happiness is objective. There's something that's objectively good for human beings. Abortion violates the natural law, it violates the moral order. It's a violation of human nature, and it's a violation of some of our most fundamental and basic human rights. Abortion is inherently disordered, and therefore it is wrong. Again, the pro-life position is simple. If you are human, you are a person, and it is always wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human. I heard from the Wapo podcast shortly after the debate about doing a rematch with Destiny, which I said I'm open to doing. I think Destiny's going to be debating other pro-life people as well. I think this is great. I want to say thank you to Destiny for being willing to have the conversation in the debate. I think that is great. Anytime that any pro-choice person is willing to have a conversation and engage with the pro-life side, I think that is good. And I've seen a lot of eyes open when those conversations happen. Thanks all again. I'll see you next time.
Okay, well, back to this.
It's pretty unusual for a top member of Democratic leadership to openly plot to kick incumbents out of office. And yet, that's what my guest today is doing. David Hogg is widely known as a survivor of the horrific Parkland school shooting in 2018. He's now the vice chair of the Democratic National Committee. The DNC, it is the party. It sets the agenda. Yet David, he started another organization called Leaders We Deserve. The stated goal of that group is to unseat Democrats in Congress, who he says are, quote, asleep at the wheel.
Damn.
He's already promised $20 million for that effort. David hopes this can solve the Democrats' popularity problem and propel them back into the majority in 2026. But can it work? David Hogg, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
So, David, I wanted to start with...
Why you look so sad?
Thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
So, David, I wanted to start with, what do you view as being the Democrats' fatal flaw right now?
I mean, how much time do we have? I'll just go back to last election cycle where voters told us two things predominantly. They told us that the president's too old and prices are too high. And with $2 billion behind us, we said effectively, no, he's not. Then yes, he is. And then we said, no, they aren't, right? Voters want people who are just honest with them, that say, we hear you. This is what we're doing to address those issues. They don't want to be shown a graph of the GDP and the S&P and the G7 that says, no, you don't understand. You shouldn't feel this way because this graph tells us otherwise. They want to be told what you were doing about the real challenges that they're facing. And I think, frankly, too, our party, people don't feel like we're fighting for them.
So your proposed solution is to primary Democrats not in competitive districts, but in places that we know Democrats are going to win. And explain to me exactly how the organization plans to go about this.
Well, in part, it's our first step here is putting this out there, right? Ultimately, we want people to know that they're being watched and that they're going to be held accountable for being as effective as they can be. And certainly there are members that are meeting this moment, right? People like Al Green that Democrats are seeing fight for them. People like Maxwell Frost, people like AOC, people like Chris Murphy, Senator Van Hollen, and others. Our first hope with this is to make sure that we are supporting them. And we're showing that while there are some effective people in our party, there certainly are some who are failing to meet the moment. And no, it's time for them not to seek re-election, whether that's because they're too old, for example, or if that's because they just aren't able to meet it. Because frankly, unfortunately, sucking is something that is not limited to age, right? There are great older people, there are terrible younger people, and vice versa. And the way that we plan to do this
still works, right?
We obviously
unloading
run
science from
as a PAC and super PAC, and they will be pretty substantial.
How do you define effective? You named a bunch of members of Congress who you say that actually are effective right now. So what does that mean to you?
Yeah, what does that mean?
I think what it means to me is, one, doing town halls in your districts. I think right now there's a division between a lot of the elected leaders in our party and the base of our party. Because the elected leadership says to themselves, well, we just got to focus on the midterms and these few frontline seats. We just got to focus on those midterms. Whereas the base of the party, they feel isolated, they feel alone, they feel unheard, and they don't feel like they're being fought for. And a lot of that base are obviously in deep blue areas. And what we need to do in order to win is make sure that we're paying attention to our brand. And I think what being effective really looks like is doing things like Senator Van Hollen are doing, not sitting on our hands and saying, oh my God, we're in the minority, we can't do anything.
Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen.
Wait, who is winning in this street fight? What do you press to turn on grids? F5. He's fighting his demons. I think the demons might be winning right now, though.
Says he has met with Kilmar Abrego Garcia in El Salvador. Van Hollen pushed for the meeting after much speculation about Abrego Garcia's well-being.
That meeting coming hours after the senator said he had been blocked, turned away from the mega prison where Abrego Garcia has been held.
Of course, it's challenging to do a lot of things when you're in the minority. I acknowledge that. However, we're seeing people that are going out there, like Senator Van Hollen, gain an incredible amount of support. We're seeing people, even like Cory Booker, going out there and giving that speech that he had.
We want to look at this live right now. This is a live look at the House floor. The New Jersey senator has officially been speaking for about 24 hours and 19 minutes straight.
And of course, is that going to change everything? No, but at least we feel like we're being fought for in the first place, and we feel like we're being heard. And in this situation, I think having members face a challenge in a safe seat, there are only potential benefits that can come from that, because we're holding our members to a higher standard, we're holding our party to a higher standard, and we're embracing the true democratic values that our party is named after, right?
Oh my God, the
Have you
Democrats. I just got
identified
that.
Democrats that you deem ineffective?
Uh-oh.
We have. What I will say is that what we are waiting on right now is whether or not some of them retire, obviously. In part because we don't want to have to primary people if it's unnecessary in the first place. What I will say is there are people that we also have identified who we will not be challenging. We will not be supporting challenges to Nancy Pelosi or Jan Schakowsky, in part because I think we do need older leaders in our party that are able to mentor the next generation. And I know I have faith in both of those people, and I also have faith in people like Jim Clyburn. I have faith in people like Steny Hoyer as well, that if the moment comes where they feel like they are not able to meet this moment anymore, that they will do the right thing and step aside and not run again. Obviously, that is up to them, but they will make that decision because they have such an incredible legacy of leadership in our party. Under Congresswoman Pelosi, we saw the first federal gun law get passed in 30 years. Obviously, that's something incredibly important to me. And also, we've seen
was that
her do
Trump's, the
incredible
bump
amount
stock?
of work to hold Donald Trump accountable.
Or was it something different?
And it gets a little complicated because we obviously support younger candidates who are running for office.
Right.
However, we're not here just to challenge somebody because they're above a certain age. It's not to say it's out with the old and in with the new.
Good job, Trump.
I would say it's more accurate to say it's out with the ineffective and in with the effective in the first place.
Are you willing to say who some of those members are who you're thinking about challenging?
Not currently, because I want to see if they retire over the next few months.
Jesus.
In some of those districts, have you identified the challenger yet?
Yes.
Okay.
I can't say more than that, but yes.
And
They are truly generational leaders. And I think a lot of the people who are most critical of this inside of DC in particular
are losers.
It's in part because they don't know who the candidates are yet. But part of the challenge of that is we want to wait to see if somebody is going to retire here in order to challenge them. But obviously there's a limit to that because our candidates are going to announce.
yeah.
I believe, though, once they see some of our candidates, they're going to feel a lot better about this, because this is something that is going to be very good for the future of our party, especially some of the candidates that we have found.
And what are you looking for in those candidates? Are you looking for certain policy positions? Are you looking for how effective of a communicator they are? Like, what do you want out of a challenger to an ineffective Democrat?
Twitter engagement.
The first thing is we want somebody who authentically feels like they care. What we're looking for are people that not only are prolific public communicators that can inspire the next generation to show them that the Democratic Party does have a voice for them. We're also looking for candidates who can represent, for younger people, somebody who is not owned by a corporation, who's not owned by a special interest, for example.
Yeah.
And that's why the candidates that we want to support will agree not to take corporate money. We want young people not to look at the Democratic and Republican parties and say, well, they're both owned by corporations. We want to show at least there is one group of them that is, one segment of them that is not. And it also comes down to also supporting, obviously, gun safety is one of those top priorities, along with major campaign finance reform, because that isn't a major part of what has caused so much of the evaporation of the American dream. Is the proliferation of our special interests that have eroded faith in our democracy, that have eroded faith in our political system, and culminated in the election of people like Donald Trump in the first place.
Yeah.
The goddamn
when I think about
donor
this model,
class.
The obvious person to think about is Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who you mentioned earlier, who obviously ran against an incumbent, an incredibly powerful Democrat in Joe Crowley, and defeated him. I mean, when you think about the perfect model for what you're doing, is she the example?
Careful.
I think it's hard for anybody to argue that she has not become a prolific leader in our party and really making our base feel like they are heard, and she's leading that charge, and I'm so grateful to have her. But I think she can be one example, but it's also
she's
about
not yet. She can
candidates
be
matching
one.
the ideologies of their districts, right? We understand that somebody who runs in New York City is not going to run the same as somebody who runs in Stevens Point, Wisconsin, for example. Those are going to be two very different candidates, and we want to pay attention to that. The most important thing though with our candidates, for me, like I said, is that that they are good on guns when they run, and they're supportive of stronger gun laws. And
why is that the one
combating gun violence in every?
Aren't gun things like some of the most district dependent ideas? Like, aren't these some of the things that vary the hardest from place to place?
Way that we can using the
I
power
know,
of
it's
the
because of the
federal
school
government to
shooting
do that. And two, supporting major campaign finance reform and not taking corporate money. We have to show our voters that we are.
With regards to abortion, they brought up about a woman terminating at 19 weeks multiple times. Would they weigh that differently for women who have a high chance of losing a child if they try to conceive and just keep trying anyway? I don't know. Good question. Actually, that is a really good question.
Here to fight for them and not some corporation.
Yeah, I wonder for you, just thinking about AOC as an example, she hasn't done as much legislatively, but she is considered an incredibly effective communicator.
Right.
I mean, for you, what is kind of more important, the ability to kind of talk prolifically about passing gun legislation or actually passing gun legislation?
I think we can and should do both. I think there's going to be some people that are much more active and outspoken on this that, may have a bigger public presence, but may not be, that legislatively connected inside of Congress, in part because they're not afraid to take on fights and call people out when we do need dramatic change, when kids are continuing to die in school shootings and gun violence on a daily basis. Look, I am doing this because I know the cost of our politicians not doing anywhere near enough. For me, this is much bigger than like, well, this person's been here for 30 years. For me, it's, well, what about the kid that is going to die next week in a school?
This sounds really, really cold, and I don't mean it to come off this way, but sometimes people are very good activists for a particular cause because they have the personal experience and they're like an effective communicator and everything. And then those people are like uniquely suited for that brand of activism, because sometimes somebody might have the experience, they're not a great communicator, they have other issues or whatever, not everybody's a good spokesman. If you do want to be a hardcore single cause advocate and you have personal experience there, I don't know if you should be in like a leadership position like this, because that's probably going to heavily cloud your judgment. And it sounds pretty clear listening to this guy talk that this is probably a disproportionately driving action for him. And I don't know if that's the best thing in the world, but
shooting, that is what I care about, right? And I don't care how many people that pisses off in this town when I know that the way that I'm going about this is not with an axe, it's with a scalpel. That's why we're trying to do this very specifically in safer blue seats and not challenge frontline candidates.
You mentioned pissing people off in this town. I wanted to read you a quote from Representative Hillary Skolton. Because some Democrats in the House are pretty angry about this. She said this was a disappointment from leadership. I can think of a million better things to do with $20 million right now.
Right.
There was another Democrat who told Axios that this was, quote, counterproductive. I wonder what you say to those critics of yours in the House.
What I would say to them is, one, not all this money is being spent on primaries in the first place. And two, we had $2 billion last election cycle for the result that we got. But we need to ask ourselves, why do we need to spend that much money in the first place? And it's in part because we have an approval rating of 27%. And there are a few people in this town that actually have a plan to address that in the first place, in part because they want to do two things at the same time. They want to keep the status quo and they want to win. Those two things are not going to be possible with the 27% approval rating. And what I would say to a lot of the people who don't agree with me is I don't take it personally. Like,
if someone believes in his soul and is pro-abortion, is it a good point to attack him if you are against abortion? I can't see how they could be pro-abortion since they can't know when the soul and body connect. I have no idea. I don't believe in souls. I don't do any kind of weird stuff like that. I have no clue. You'd have to ask the soul person.
We want the same thing here, ultimately. We want Democrats to win. I want Democrats to win. And when I'm going on TikTok or I'm going on social media and I'm talking to people about what I'm doing, I am saying to them, look, I understand that you're frustrated. The answer here is not disengaging. It is engaging to build the best Democratic Party possible, whether that's running for state or local office or running for Congress. And I don't take these things personally. I take it as a strategic disagreement is ultimately how I take it. And I know when they see some of our candidates that do come out that even some of these critics are going to be very excited about who they are and the potential future that they represent.
There's long been this idea in Democratic politics that the only way to win is kind of to bring everyone into the middle, to win over swing voters. And yet, you know, yourself, AOC, you're pretty polarizing. You've been pretty polarizing.
Only a little bit.
Only a little bit. Fodder for the right, you know, pissing off some people within your own party. I mean, are you worried about...
AOC doesn't run for like a national level. Well, technically, I guess it's U.S. House. But that's the voters are from a particular district. So careful with how you analyze that.
Alienating any of the voters that Democrats for so long have said are absolutely essential to winning national races.
No, because we've already alienated them. And it wasn't because, you know, I was doing this last cycle. We saw major shifts with almost every demographic.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Got 'em.
Except predominantly the elderly and the well-educated. And there are two things that really drove me to do this. One, and it happened in the span of about a 24-hour period that made me start thinking a lot about it. I got a call from a friend from college, and she said, David, I'm so mad at my Democratic member of Congress for voting to do something. And they were mad at their Democratic member of Congress for voting to censure Al Green.
By its adoption of House Resolution 189, the House has resolved.
Fuck that guy. I'll support this whole dude's organization if he's primarying anybody that, remember this and record it, we will support whoever primaries anybody trying to, or whoever is primarying Al Green. Anybody primarying any politician who voted to censure Al Green. There we go. Jesus.
If Al Green be censured, that Representative Al Green forthwith present himself in the well of the House of Representatives for the pronouncement of censure, and that Representative Al Green be censured with public reading of this resolution by the Speaker.
And look, I have my own frustrations with that. And I said, well, who's your member of Congress? And I looked it up, and it was a Democrat in a D+3 seat. And I said, I understand your frustration. I don't agree with this vote either. But do not do this.
Okay, wait, never mind, maybe. Fuck, okay, that's true.
Yeah.
You are going to potentially cost us the House, even if you do win your primary, and we cannot risk losing the House right now. And she was like, oh, I see. And I said, look, we can help you run for something else, for state ledge or local office or whatever else it might be. But please do not do this. And I was able to convince her not to. The next thing that happened is I was in a meeting where I got to see the approval ratings of our party.
Yeah.
They were
bottom of the
great.
chart. The graph just straight down, basically. And I asked them, what did this graph look like for Republicans before the Tea Party? And they said identical.
We could be the Tea Party, guys.
We have a real problem on our hands.
In this election year in the United States, a majority of Americans say the country is on the wrong track. And no segment of the electorate is more frustrated with the U.S. government and President Barack Obama than the folks driving the Tea Party movement.
With the energy of a high-octane rock band, they propelled the Republicans to historic wins.
Tonight, there's a Tea Party tidal wave.
What I'm trying to do with this is instead of having a major moment where everything is getting burned down and we potentially lose the House because our base is so mad at us, we eat our own alive, that we do it instead of with an axe, with a scalpel, and handle these disagreements in very specific districts where we will not lose the House, potentially, but ensure that we give our base a voice to be active in these primaries. And let's not forget, a lot of the oldest members of Congress that are some of them that are the most against this got involved with politics after protesting the 1968 DNC.
Wow.
Where they were so furious about the way that the party was keeping people out of the primary process. And primaries are healthy for democracy, and I would argue they are healthy for the Democratic Party. Because
why'd you say this won't work?
Is, if you were doing your job and you're being effective, this should not concern you. But if you are anxious from listening to this or hearing about this idea, you should ask yourself, if you're a member of Congress, why and how you can change.
Do you see this as the Democrats' Tea Party moment?
I don't necessarily see this as our Tea Party moment, but I think it could be a moment where we can really strengthen our party by holding ourselves accountable internally more and saying, look, like, it is okay for us to have primaries. We are the party of democracy, right? and show people that we actually mean that. And that means holding our own people accountable too, to get the best people possible to serve them in a district and give their voters that option. Because we've replaced those smoke-filled back rooms with a culture of seniority politics that says, well, just because you've been there means that you deserve to continue being there, instead of having to prove why you're there. And if you're doing your job and your voters believe that you are, you have nothing to worry about here at all. What we're trying to do with this is make sure that all Democrats across the board, specifically in our safer districts, know that they need to step up to meet the plate, to meet this moment, and show our base that we are fighting for them, because far too many of them feel like we are not right now.
I mean, some would argue that what the Republicans did in
this isn't good.
2010
This doesn't
with
work.
the Tea Party movement is what moved the party so far right that it's almost unrecognizable to
But they continue to win,
Republicans.
too.
Were you surprised by Donald Trump's win in November, and also the fact that Kamala Harris so dramatically underperformed with young voters? Like, going into the election in November, was that your expectation?
So I would say that like, this race was incredibly close, right? I was surprised still that Donald Trump won, in part because, you know, you just hope that
he's a cringe
your side wins,
loser.
obviously.
Oh, that too.
But ultimately, I wasn't surprised by the drift of young people. When I was in the National Finance Committee, literally at the DNC at the convention as one of the young people part of that committee, I got up and said, we have a serious issue with young men. What are we doing about this? And I got an incredible amount of pushback saying, this is a ridiculous question from other members.
Wait, okay. I heard this guy say some cringe shit about gun stuff, and it sounds like he said some cringe shit about gun stuff here. But other than that, it seems like he's very, very, very on point, no? This is an issue that I brought up a ton. Bro, I cannot believe that Marianne Williamson literally played the biggest meme card in the world. When I was like, what about young white men? And she's like, oh, well, women have the same problems. Let's talk about women. Like, wait, what?
In that committee, saying this is a ridiculous question. This is not something we need to focus on, and like it is idiotic, basically, of you to focus on this. I said it publicly as well, and then unfortunately, we saw one of the largest shifts of young people to the right in decades.
Yeah.
And we are at a crisis moment in our party where the younger segment of Gen Z is dramatically shifting to the right, and we are failing to meet this moment to show them what we are actually doing to fight for them. When a lot of those young people are the ones that have helped to decide these elections, especially younger people of color in particular. And it is an indictment of the Democratic Party that right now, we can't just say, well, the reason why our approvals are where they are is because people haven't seen what Donald Trump is going to do. We're seeing it. He is disappearing people. He is wrecking the stock market by toying with our economy with all this tariff stupidity, and our approvals are still as low as they are.
Final question from my perspective. I have an audience of who are considered, I guess, like the dispossessed of the Democratic Party. So younger white men, basically. What do you think?
We're women, and we're dispossessed too.
Oh, I don't know. Have I seen this meme edit? I can't believe she did that so fast. Oh my God. Christ. Considered, I guess, like the dispossessed of the Democratic Party. So younger white men, basically. What do you think?
We're women, and we're dispossessed too. We're
Okay.
We're homeless too.
Sure, yeah. Do you think that there's anything in particular that the Democratic Party can do to kind of like win some of these people back? Like in particular, do you think it's just a broad message narrative?
Okay.
Yeah.
So first of all, and you'll understand this based on everything I've said, I don't think things like, what could I do to win them back? That's the kind of language that doesn't even reside in my heart. My heart is, where have we failed them? Okay? Because if you stop failing people, they'll be yours again, right? Where have we failed men? I think we're all male, we're all female within our, psyche, etc. But I believe that economic.
Final question from my perspective. I have an audience.
That is an indictment of our party, and it is an indictment of not just our messaging, but more than anything, our characters. You can have the best script in the world. If you have bad actors, it doesn't matter.
Well, David, I was going to ask you, because for as long as I've been covering politics, Democrats have been talking about affordable housing. They've been talking about lowering healthcare costs. I mean, what do they have to do differently? Because they are talking about all those things, but it's obviously not resonating.
Well, I think what we need to do differently is get people that are on the front lines of it, right? If you've been a member of Congress for 30 years, you're making six figures, you're pretty comfortable, to be honest with you. We need the young people that know the anxiety of what it is like to go through a school shooter drill and then go to college and graduate with a lifetime of student debt.
Yeah.
And then go into a job market where...
Motherfucker, you have not had a lifetime yet. What does that mean? My face when I'm 33, I was like, I have a lifetime of debt. Yeah, you've had like 18 years of debt, okay? What do you mean? Your life just started, bro.
They are going to be faced with a job that does not pay nearly as much as they need it to in order to pay off that student debt, only to then try to get an apartment that they can't afford because there's so much price fixing going on around the country right now through these AI algorithms that different corporations are using to price fix.
The AI algorithms on the cloud.
Those issues. And that is why we need those more young people to be elected, not to mention the fact that we talk about diversity all the time in Congress. We don't talk about age nearly enough.
Or
in that
AIDS.
regard. If we had the same number of people in Congress that are between the ages of 25 and 30 as we do in the general population, we would have over 40 members of Congress that are under the age of 30 right now. Currently, there is one. It's Maxwell.
Yeah.
And that is not good for the future of our party. And let me tell you why.
Why?
Whether it's Lincoln, LBJ, FDR, or Joe Biden, all of them were elected before they were 30. So many of our nation's most prolific presidents and leaders became, in my opinion, as prolific as they were because they were elected when they were younger. They knew how to play the game, they knew how to get things done, and they became very good executives because of that experience.
David, this is something I've been thinking about since November. I mean, who is the leader of the Democratic Party right now?
Right now, I would say it is a culmination of people. I think for some people, it's AOC. I think for some people, it is people like Hakeem Jeffries. For other people, it's people like Ro Khanna and others. And frankly, that's naturally going to happen when you don't have a nominee for president. And I think that's okay, right? And I think the fact of the matter is, when we are the Democratic Party, we're going to have a litany of people that are the leaders of our party. And eventually, of course, we're going to have a nominee for president, and that will help to consolidate like that answer of who the leader is. But right now, we have a bunch of people around the country who are leaders for different constituents. And people say a lot of the time, too, that...
No, they don't.
Well, Democrats, we just need a more united message. We just got to be better at our messaging.
Nobody says that.
The reality is...
Our message sucks.
When you are teamed up against somebody that has a cult of personality of someone that says either you believe this or you're excommunicated and you're not part of this party anymore, our message is never going to be as united as that. And in some sense...
Fucking true! Fuck, this guy has some cringe takes. Some of these takes are dead the fuck on. Yes.
I think that is okay because we are not a cult. And I don't want us to be in that situation where just what one person says is what all of us have to believe. I think that is one of the strengths of the Democratic Party is we have a plethora of strategies and messages because we are not just one type of person. We are a very diverse group of people, and that's going to result in a slightly more diverse message, and that is okay. What we need to do, though, is be united in fighting back against Donald Trump in tangible...
We have so many different people. Never mind.
...ways, and showing them that we are not just, as some people have advocated for, just hiding or not saying anything and just hoping that things are going to get better. When our Constitution is under attack, when the foundations of our democracy are being eroded away, and we have a president that is actively not listening to the Supreme Court and disappearing people while also crashing the stock market at the same time.
And crashing out.
Well, David, thank you so
He
much
didn't
for
even
joining
say
us.
crashing
I really
out.
appreciate all your thoughts and insights.
Absolutely.
Yikes. Bump, 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 bump. Okay. I'm about to crush these labs, okay? You're about to see the craziest lab setup you've ever seen in your whole life. Ethan and Hassan break up. Real 4K. 7 days old. Does Destiny read YouTube chat? Oof, another permaban chatter. Whoosh, whoosh.
This man is the nastiest, to be honest, bitch I've ever met. Dude, not platform. And he is dead. Genocidal. Jew. Ethan is such a hateful person. He's just so mean.
Is this true? Ethan's kids got sick from eating dog shit? Good lord. What's that say? Kill a client, is that?
Child killing IDF operative.
Okay, Hassan. It will be alright.
How could somebody be so mean?
Don't worry, we're gonna get the word out.
What the fuck is this?
If we're going to do this, we're going to need help.
And then the banlings swarm from the rear.
That's me!
trapping and preventing them
Okay,
from
the meme
leaving.
is based
And
all of a
that's
sudden.
why it's not technically rape, just because you took your condom off.
Mr. Benelli?
Yes, Atlas?
Wait, Atlas? Is
Denims,
this a DGGer?
You took your
Oh,
condom
shit.
off.
Mr. Benelli?
Yes, Atlas? Denims, you're kicked out of DGG. All right, back to chat. N-I.
Okay, base.
Welcome to the tank. You're here because of this. Hassan wants it to look like we wrote it, but really Hassan wrote it.
Jesus, okay. Based? That was a good meme. There's a gun YouTuber? A gun YouTuber? This is one of the most fucking... Wait, I don't remember. We watched this guy. Was he a total Trump dick suck or just not?
For them, because we go out there as Democrats all the time and say democracy is the most important thing. We have to defend democracy. We fail to acknowledge that this generation, democracy is what put us through school shooter drills and school shootings. It's what's put us through the climate crisis and so much more. What we have to do is prove that democracy matters by standing up to the special interests that are killing the American dream and making our young people lose faith, not only in our party, but the future of this country. That is why we're doing.
Did this fool just blame democracy for school shootings?
Democracy is what put us through school shooter drills and school shootings.
Say, Broham, you became vice chair of the DNC because of that same democracy. The same system you're condemning is the one that catapulted you into the spotlight, fueled by a tragedy you've been leveraging ever since. But
leveraging. Ooh.
Let me get this straight. You're saying democracy gave us school shootings? So your solution is what? Dismantling democracy to save democracy?
What we have to do is prove that democracy matters by standing up to the special interests that are killing the American dream.
You mean like the special interest group you founded called March for Our Lives? The one literally designed to chip away at the Second Amendment under the guise of saving lives?
Damn, this guy has more guns than you? Okay, true. Shit. I need to get that MPX.
You don't get to wrap yourself in the flag of democracy while setting fire to the Constitution. That's not being a patriot. That's being a parasite. But here's the kicker. We're not a fucking democracy. We're a constitutional republic.
Oh my God.
And the founding fathers designed it that way to stop people like you from using emotional mob rule to bulldoze other people's rights.
Not emotional mob
So no,
rule.
David. The problem is democracy.
David,
The
more like
problem
dumb fuck.
is you. Now, let's break this all the way down. You see, David Hogg went on national television and basically said democracy is to blame for school shootings, climate change, and whatever other trending hashtag he's using to fundraise that week. And then he doubles down by saying we have to defend democracy by standing up to special interests. Again, this man founded a special interest group for the sole purpose of gutting the Second Amendment. You are the special interest, David. That's like Ben and Jerry blaming childhood obesity while selling double fudge brownie sundaes.
Lynn
and the real
Fayot?
irony We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic. And that distinction matters. A democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. A republic.
Fuck, that's, oh yeah, a democracy is two wolves and sheep voting on what's for dinner. Oh, that's what a democracy is. Oh, okay.
That's when the sheep is armed and there are rules in place that say you can't just vote away. That's when the sheep is armed.
Oh, so a republic is when guns? That's what makes it a republic? Is that?
And the sheep voting on what's for dinner. A republic, that's when the sheep is armed and there are rules in place that say you can't just vote away someone's rights because it feels.
Wait, is that even about a democracy? I thought the quote was like something like democracy versus liberty. Am I making that up? It's like democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to eat, and liberty is a well-armed sheep or something. I don't remember. Fuck. What did Constitutional Republic? LOL.
Good in the moment. And David Hogg, Harvard grad that he is, either doesn't know that or he doesn't care, because what he's pushing for isn't democracy, it's emotional tyranny.
Democracy is what put us through school shooter drills and school shootings.
Let me translate that for you. I want to change the rules because I don't like the outcome.
By the way, hey, dipshit, that's literally what our system is you can change the rules if you don't like how they're going. That's kind of the whole fucking point of a constitutional republic, is that you can change the fucking rules. We have a constitution with an amendment process.
You know what that sounds like? That sounds like a kid rage quitting a video game because he keeps losing. And trust me, I've been there. But this ain't Call of Duty. You don't get to unplug the Constitution just because you can't win by the rules. And this is where I have to get real. School shootings don't happen because of democracy. They happen because of cultural decay of accountability, because of mental health neglect, and yes, because of people who think the answer is infringing on rights instead of fixing the actual problem. People like you, David. People who want to be famous more than they want to be free. You built your entire public persona on a tragedy you didn't even take a moment to step away from. You just climbed on and never looked back. Now, even if I give you the benefit of the doubt, even if what you meant to say was that young people have lost faith in democracy because it hasn't solved gun violence, climate change, or the price of oat milk at Whole Foods, the solution still isn't to blow up the system. You don't fix a broken window by burning the house down. The founding fathers understood this. That's why they gave us a framework designed to withstand political fads, emotional manipulation, and yeah, people who think like David Hogg. And since we're on the topic of special interest groups, I figured it's time I started my own. It's called the Anti-Two-Way Social Club.
Lim Feo,
wearing
dude.
it right here on my hat. We don't have lobbyists. We don't have a fancy office in DC. We've got hoodies, t-shirts, and hats that basically says, I'm not just pro-gun, I'm anti-gun.
How can one man be so
it's defiance,
fucking
wrapped
epic?
in cotton and stitched with don't tread on me energy. Because if you're going to call me a special interest just for wanting to protect my rights, fine, I'll be that. So join the club, literally. You can grab the gear over at shop.mrcolonwar.com and make your stance loud without saying a word. So let's recap. David Hogg just admitted that he thinks democracy is the problem while trying to use democracy to push authoritarian policies. He rails against special interests while being a special interest. He blames the system instead of taking a long, hard look at the culture and ideologies that keep producing those tragedies. And the most ironic part of all, he's not even operating in a democracy. He's operating in a constitutional republic designed to protect all our rights, especially the uncomfortable ones. So no, David, democracy can fail. But if we follow your advice,
it will.
It will.
Damn.
One thing's for certain and two things are for sure. Politicians and tech giants don't want gun content to be recommended to you. And we're all fighting this culture war together. Now, you can help do your part by liking, commenting, subscribing to the channel, but most importantly, sharing this video with at least one person. Together, we can stop the suppression of our two-way rights. And don't forget to click the link in the description section of this video for the products that I mentioned in this video.
Let's fucking go. Parker debates MAGA supporters. Wait.
I've heard that phrase. It's a very popular, common phrase in the business world.
I know. Think about it. Just think about it for a second.
Well, and I think that's what I don't think it's as dangerous as you guys are making it out to be. I think it's a good thing that there's a lot of people talking about it. There's a lot of awareness. And it's up to us to figure out like what's really going on and what.
I have a
autism really
question.
is.
I have a question. You said all publicity is good publicity. Is there bad publicity?
I mean, sure, but it's just kind of one of those.
No,
things.
if you say that all publicity is good publicity, I can't even speak publicity, right? Then it entails that there's no bad publicity. Okay, so if you just said
to my family, friends.
Okay, I don't care about this. I do care about this.
Supporters and colleagues, I want to speak to you directly and from the heart. This is a shakedown.
We have a new public response, a new disturbing piece of audio, and new graphic text messages. The legal battle between NFL Hall of Famer Shannon Sharpe and his sexual assault accuser definitely has intensified. As we go through these new developments, who's telling the truth about what really happened?
Wait, does this guy give good analysis, or does his analysis suck? Do we stand this guy for sports commentary?
The Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. A new legal war has begun, and this time it's between NFL.
Wait, Dennis? Come on. At least a little bit, right? At least a little bit.
NFL Hall of Famer, podcaster, commentator Shannon Sharpe, and the woman who's accusing him of sexually assaulting and raping her as recently as January of this year. Now, we covered this earlier in the week, but now, not only has Shannon Sharpe fired back in a major way, releasing a public message, a response, apparently revealing the identity of this Jane Doe, but he's also published never-before-seen apparent text messages between the two. Quite a response, to say the least. And then what happens? You think the story ends there? No. She fires back by releasing an apparent audio tape between her and Shannon Sharpe. This is crossed to a whole different kind of level, and I want to get into what we're seeing right now. We're going to break it down, but first, let's take a step back. Let's learn a little bit more.
He's a legal analyst. I like him. Never heard him talk sports before, though. But he's based on constitutional... Wait, what? You're trolling, right?
More about the backstory, what's happening here. So, we have 56-year-old Shannon Sharpe, who has been sued by an unidentified woman. She's going by the pseudonym Jane Doe, and she is suing him for $50 million in Nevada court. She claims that after meeting Shannon Sharpe at the gym back in 2023 and beginning a consensual relationship with him, who, by the way, she claims is 30 years older than her, it escalated into him allegedly insisting they record their sexual activity, sometimes without her knowledge, him sharing those videos with others, him allegedly telling her that he would do...
This guy's... Hey, listen, I don't know what he did, but I'm supporting him. And he's getting sued by the same person? How does Jane Doe have so much free time? What the fuck?
Him allegedly, she claims, is 30 years older than her.
How old is he? Is she just trying to say she's like young, or is he like 42 or something and she's like 12? Yeah, Jane Doe is getting too powerful.
It escalated into him allegedly insisting they record their sexual activity, sometimes
she's
without
21,
her
he's
knowledge,
46. Okay.
him sharing those videos with others, him allegedly telling her that he would do things to her that, quote, would make no other man want her, that he...
This is the Lakers and 5 guy. You know him? Bro, I just tweeted out Lakers and 5 because somebody said it and it would be funny. I don't know what the fuck that means. My guess is NBA is like series, right? So when you say Lakers in 5, it means they're going to 5-0 a series because somebody did something stupid? I have no idea.
Allegedly manipulated her, controlled her, threatened her, intimidated her, was able to gain access to her apartment complex without her permission. For example, this is from the lawsuit. It reads, the verbal abuse never stopped. He would berate and degrade plaintiff, just as he had from the beginning. One time specifically, he was yelling at her while there was a firearm visible in his room. Terrified for her safety, plaintiff tried sharing her location with friends from her iPhone just in case. But Sharpe saw her doing this.
Wait, okay, hold on. Why wouldn't you leave the apartment? Like, oh shit, I think my life's in danger here. What are you gonna do? I'm gonna turn on my Snap map. He would degrade plaintiff just as he had from the beginning. One time still he was yelling at her while there was a firearm visible in the room. Terrified of her safety, plaintiff returned her location with friends from her iPhone just in case, but Sharpe saw her doing this. The moment he realized what she was doing, he grabbed her by the neck and told her, you ever do that again? I will blankin' kill you.
The moment he realized what she was doing, he grabbed her by the neck and told her, if you ever do that again, I will bleeping kill you. And then this finally all allegedly culminated with
Oh shit, I have firearms visible in my room. And I just made death threats. This is my spirit animal. Just kidding. Those death threats were mean, by the way. And they weren't even real death threats. Okay. Don't clip me.
Claiming that I'll kill you. And then this finally all allegedly culminated with Jane Doe claiming that in October of 2024, Sharpe violently sexually assaulted and raped her in Las Vegas, all while she was allegedly sobbing. And she claims he did this again recently in January of 2025, her allegedly begging him to stop as this was purportedly going on.
Damn. Why is this in civil court? Did she file charges or anything or call the police? Damn. All right. We got some intense shit going on here.
So she has sued him for assault, sexual battery.
Okay, this guy is no longer my spirit animal. All right? I no longer stand him. Yet. Well, hold on. We're on the fence now, okay? We don't know. We don't know. We're on the fence, okay? I don't know if what she's saying is true, okay? It could be a fucking lie.
Battery, sexual battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress. She's being represented by Texas attorney Tony Busby, who we know famously represented a Jane Doe in a now defunct sexual assault lawsuit against Jay-Z. He represents several accusers in actions against Sean Diddy Combs as well. But as I mentioned, Shannon Sharpe has responded. This is what we want to get into. And let me tell you, did he respond? A lot of money at stake in this case, right? And talking money, actually, how about getting money back? Let me tell you about Upside. Upside is fantastic.
Okay.
It is a free app that gets you cash back when you buy daily essentials. I pump my gas, I can use Upside. I go out to lunch at Chipotle, I can use Upside. Maybe I get something at 7-Eleven, I can use Upside.
That's crazy.
Why not get cash back when I do all these things, right?
Damn.
And yes, this is actual real cash back. It's money that
Real
appears in
cash?
the Upside app that you transfer right into your bank account. So once you have the free Upside app, you claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You pay as usual using a debit or credit card. You follow the steps on the app, you get paid. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen. But make sure to use our promo code SIDEBAR because you get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon.
Let's go. 25 cents back.
First, we have this statement from him on his Instagram where he says that he's going to be open, transparent, defend himself because this isn't right. And he says that this whole thing is being orchestrated by Tony Busby.
Tony Busby targets black men, and I believe he's going to release a 30-second clip of a sex tape that tries to make me look guilty and play into every stereotype you could possibly imagine. That video should actually be 10 minutes or so. Hey, Tony, instead of releasing your edit, put the whole video out.
Wait, did the lawyer really publish the video? Can somebody link me the complaint real quick? I'm just curious what she's suing for. Did you see this? Elon Musk heard screen. We're past politics, okay? We're on a rape review right now.
I don't have it, or I would myself. You know what happened, and you're trying to manipulate the media.
And he goes on to say that the encounter in question took place during the day at the invitation of Jane Doe, says that this was all a deliberate setup by her. He also, by the way, revealed her first name and apparently her name that she purportedly uses on OnlyFans. We're not going to reveal those names here. We're not going to do that. But he does go on to say, quote, "My career is all about real talk and honesty. I know my family and fans know exactly what this is about, and I'm going to be out there telling you whatever I need to say, just like I always do." And we also got a statement from his attorney, Lonnie J. Davis, and that reads, "Mr. Sharpe categorically denies all allegations of coercion or misconduct, especially the gross lie of rape, and will not submit to what he sees as an egregious attempt at blackmail. He stands firmly by the truth and is prepared to fight these false claims vigorously in court." And Davis has also commented about that apparent tape that was seemingly referenced by Sharpe because he accuses Jane Doe of providing a, quote, secretly recorded and heavily edited video to them that purports to be a non-consensual encounter of some kind. But Davis claimed that Jane Doe, quote, has refused to provide a copy of the full unedited version of the recording to Mr. Sharpe's legal team.
They talk to us. How this dating thing? Because this is Mo is different now. Than when you and I.
It's different, baby. I'm grateful I'm not 56 and trying.
Are you trying to say what you trying to say? Mo?
I'm
You
looking right at you,
I know
I'm
you looking at me.
I ain't backing down. You better take your old ass and get somebody to love you.
Damn, Mo.
Now I'm looking right at y'all. Let me tell y'all what Shannon needs.
Let me live my
Let
life.
me tell you what my baby need. He need him an old fat gal who can bake good cakes, make some smothered turkey wings, who gonna rub his feet at the nighttime, okay, and gonna have a sip of his cognac to make him feel better about himself when he come home at night. That's what Shannon need. You don't need no 26-year-old girl. You don't need no 36-year-old girl. This is your auntie talking to you. Take your old ass and get you an old bitch out there that can love you old. You trying to hang out with these young bitches and you can't do it, Shannon. You just can't.
Why don't I have a sassy black woman like this in my life? Who is this?
Do it. When they want you to go for the 4th round, you looking at her like, bitch, listen, I need you want some money to go to Starbucks?
Yeah,
because I can't go no further. But if you get your older girl, when you get to that 4th round, she's gonna say, hold on. Let me go get you some eggs and cheese and some toast with apple butter, because that's going to get your energy back up. I'm talking right to you. Shit. So he thought I was going to be scared. Yes, I'm talking. And I know an old gal, she'll be good to you.
Based. He did an erection enhancer sponsorship when the IG Live sex tape incident happened. Jesus. Okay, let me check this real quick. I'm just curious. In the 8th Judicial District Court of the state of Nevada, in and for the county of Clark. Does this mean it was filed as in federal court for Nevada, or does anybody know? If it says district court, I don't know if district court always implies. Okay, what do we got? Introduction. A woman can say yes to consensual sexual relations with a man 99 times, but when she says no even once, that no means no. Defendant Shannon Sharpe, a man who is accustomed to getting what he wants, completely fails to understand this basic concept. Damn. Okay. After many months of manipulating and controlling plaintiff, a woman more than 30 years younger than he, and repeatedly threatening to brutally choke and violently slap her, Sharpe refused to accept the answer no and raped plaintiff, despite her sobbing and repeated screams of no. Damn. When was this filed? 4/20. Blaze it! Blaze it up! This was filed 5 days ago. Okay. 4 days ago. Whew. Usually a federal court has northern, etc., district of in the title, not state of. Okay. So they filed this one. This is a state court. Okay. Defendant Shannon Sharpe is a 56-year-old former NFL superstar. Wait, let me just make sure this is going back and forth. And then we'll read it. Fuck it. Why not, bro? Wait. Did I make all the... Hello? Oh, wait. No. Oh, I'm actually fucking retarded. Unironically, I talked to Big Ack. He's live and covering this. And this same lawyer is suing him too. Oh, shit. No, I don't want to get on this dude's fucking radar. Fuck. I like being sued by the penny lawyers, okay? It's all fun and games until the big boys get involved. Fuck that. Wait, there's no way 2 arms. This doesn't make sense. Wait, fuck me. I'm being retarded. Hold on. Boom, 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 and then doom, doom, and then Boom, boom. Just like that. Wait. There we go. Nah, wait. I like a little bit before. Hold on. Oh. And then... Hold on. Touch this. All right. Let's fucking go. Let's go. Defendant Shannon Sharpe is a 56-year-old former NFL superstar. 3443. Conspiracy confirmed. What is this? Video unavailable. Way to go, dipshit. He claims to be one of the most successful sports media personalities in the country. Plaintiff is a young woman in her early 20s. In 2020, that means 24. Just kidding. In 2023, Plaintiff was working out at a gym in Los Angeles, California, when Sharpe approached her for the first time. It was an equinox. Previously, Doe had noticed Sharpe watching her during her workouts. At this time, Doe was just 19 years old, freshly 19. At the time, she did not know who he was, only that he was another older man ogling her at the gym. Doe could tell Sharpe was much older than her. She found him physically intimidating. Eventually, he introduced himself. At his determined insistence, she gave him her number. Over the next couple of weeks, Sharpe incessantly pursued Plaintiff. He constantly approached her at the gym and attempted to contact her frequently with phone calls and text messages asking to meet up, unwilling to take no for an answer. Eventually, Plaintiff gave in and agreed to meet with Sharpe outside of the gym. However, before doing so, Sharpe demanded that Doe sign a non-disclosure agreement or NDA. This is based, okay? Fuck. I'm working on this, okay? Don't worry. Something Plaintiff found a bit concerning. She wondered why Sharpe was so insistent on her signing an NDA. She refused. Despite his repeated efforts to get her to sign, she refused time and again. Eventually, he dropped the issue and invited her to his house. What followed was the beginning of a rocky, consensual relationship that lasted nearly 2 years. The relationship was very unequal. Sharpe was more than 30 years older, is considerably wealthier, is physically much larger, and exponentially stronger. Sharpe is famous and has power. Plaintiff and Sharpe saw each other on his terms and on his schedule as often as 4 times a week. Over time, Plaintiff began to see Sharpe's true nature. She found him to be dishonest about his whereabouts. He would lie about seeing other women, while insisting to her that she and he were exclusive. He often manipulated her, at times being sweet and loving to get what he wanted, and at other times, blah, blah, again, I don't know or something. Plaintiff left Nevada to temporarily escape. Defendant Shannon Sharpe. She now seeks justice through this action and other means. Plaintiff seeks compensatory and punitive damages in this matter in excess of $50 million. Whew. My God. Parties. Plaintiff Jane Doe. Defendant Shannon Sharpe. No, we don't care. Wait, right? Yeah, they got it. This will come back. Okay. Okay, we got this jurisdiction. Relief requested is in the minimum jurisdictional limits of this court pursuant to Nevada law. Venue proper is Clark County, Nevada. Factual allegations. Defendant Shannon Sharpe. My base is fine. We don't care. Let's see. There's another lawsuit. As an example, he is currently a defendant in a lawsuit before the Supreme Court of New York, facing claims from a woman of intentional infliction of emotional distress, among other allegations. Many of the factual allegations in the New York case are eerily similar to his actions toward plaintiff here. According to the New York lawsuit, Sharpe forcibly subdued the plaintiff in that case. Okay. Is he being sued by the same lawyer in New York? I know that woman, it's all fake. Wait, is that guy just saying retarded shit, or is that case supposed to be cringe? That's why he skipped the manipulation. Oh, good one. Dipshit. Okay. Okay, wait. Live stream himself on accident having sex with a woman. Oh no. To live stream himself, he would have to deliberately swipe right on Instagram to activate the live feed. Sharpe claims it was accidental. However, discreetly recording sex without his partner's knowledge is something he is known to do. He did so with the plaintiff herein. Uh-oh. Plaintiff discovered that Sharpe had been secretly recording their sexual encounters without her consent. When she confronted him, he summarily dismissed her concerns, claiming the videos were for his own personal use. That, too, was a lie. Oh my God. They had the jerk party with the recorded videos. Upon information and belief, Sharpe on multiple occasions shared the recordings with his friends and associates. At one point, even forced Plaintiff to have sex with him while FaceTiming one of his childhood friends named Bucket. Whenever Plaintiff would get up the courage to object to Sharpe's outrageous conduct, which was not often, he would aggressively and angrily put her back in her place. Shannon Sharpe isn't just a sports icon, he's something far worse. He is a flawed, narcissistic individual who has spent years using his fame, power, and influence to manipulate, control, subjugate, and violate women. With this suit, Plaintiff intends to put an end to this egregious conduct. She found Sharpe standing inches behind her. Oh my God. Plaintiff at the time had just turned 20 years old, freshly 20. You got a payment from the Mossad and kick chat. Wait, what? Wait, was there a sub or something that I missed? Wait. $5 gifted. Well, thank you. Wait, I feel like this didn't show up for me. Oh, 25 gifted subs. Thank you, Thiologist. During their first conversation, Sharpe proposed a challenge, a competition to see who could lean out faster. The prize, if Plaintiff won, he would buy her fake tits. Plaintiff was stunned. The implication that she needed or wanted such a thing was wildly inappropriate. Hearing it from a stranger more than 30 years her senior made it even more disturbing. Damn. Revealed from the start, the violent, aggressive, controlling nature of Shannon Sharpe. Oh no. When Plaintiff arrived, the first night Plaintiff went to Sharpe's house, the experience was unlike anything she has dealt with before. Disturbing, unsettling, and, given his subsequent conduct, very illuminating. When Plaintiff arrived at his house, Sharpe opened the door to his Beverly Glen mansion without a word. No greeting, no acknowledgement, no small talk. Without so much as looking at Plaintiff, he simply turned away from her after opening the door and walked upstairs. Plaintiff hesitated, but followed, as she did not know what else to do or where else to go. Oh no, the classic walk away bait. It's like a dog. You start running away and they have to follow you. Is a possible reason why the accusers aren't going to the police is because criminal court has a higher burden of proof? Yeah, you can sue for whatever the fuck you want. Who knows how real or true any of this is, but you can always sue for whatever you want. This sounds like blatant dumbassery. Why go back? Well, this is a complaint. This is the case filed by the woman suing. So you're going to talk up your side as much as you can in this. Just from reading this, my guess is this is all bullshit. This sounds like ridiculous. But this is their complaint. They want to sound as good as possible in it. So yeah, he used his aura to literally force her to follow him upstairs. When they reached the bedroom, Sharpe pointed to the bed before disappearing into the bathroom and shutting the door behind him. He still had not said a word. Plaintiff sat on the bed, waiting, unsure of what to expect or if she should leave. Plaintiff sat on the bed waiting. Roughly 5 minutes later, he finally emerged, but still, he said nothing. Instead, he turned off all the lights and laid down on his bed. Plaintiff, uncomfortable and unsure of what to do, lay down as well. What? Jesus. I knew from the first time I saw you that I was going to fuck you. Doe and Sharpe then engaged in oral sex. As they did so, Doe at some point realized Sharpe was using his phone. He was apparently recording her. I thought he turned off all the lights. Ooh, stealth, the night recording. Maybe he's got NVG lenses. Plaintiff could see that he was trying to be discreet, but it was obvious what he was doing. She said nothing, scared to confront him for what he might do. Or say, when it ended, he rolled over and went to sleep. At some point during the night, Sharpe woke up, grabbed Plaintiff by her vagina, and began having sex with her. The next morning, he woke up at 4 a.m. to shoot a media segment for sports television. He woke Plaintiff as well and told her she needed to leave, but he informed her that she had to be back by 9 p.m. exactly. Sit the fuck down or I'm gonna kill you. Damn. Raped her despite her sobbing in agony. Turn around and look at me. Sharpe grabbed her head, forcing her to look at him as she sobbed. He said at that point, look at this. Look at my arm. I've got chills. That's how good this is. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. We're really... First claim for relief. Assault, sexual assault, battery, and sexual battery. Is there really a... Is there a civil cause of action for this type of stuff? Are you... Can you just put whatever? Intentional infliction of emotional distress. Where of this one? And a demand for jury trial. Oh, they didn't even load them up. Just those two. Okay. God damn. All right, well.
And then there's this. Sharpe and his legal team released all of these apparent text messages between him and this Jane Doe, reportedly 44 pages worth of communications. For example, as reported by TMZ, there's one apparent message from October 2023 where Jane Doe seemingly messages Sharpe, I want you to put a dog collar around my neck and choke me with it while you're bleeping me.
Jesus.
Now, the New York Post reporting on other messages allegedly from Jane Doe, like, tie me up and do bad things to me. I know you missed this big juicy bleep, $25K for each cheek. Tie me up like this and bleep me, with Sharpe replying, if I knew how to, I would. She then allegedly wrote back, it's okay, I have handcuffs, we can stick to those for now. Jane Doe also allegedly writing, I want like some hardcore BDSM action though, and feeling kind of freaky lately. And then you have this apparent message from March 14th, 2024. I want to be abused, daddy. And then another message from last year where she apparently wrote him, I've always wanted a black baby. Now, Lonnie Davis commented that, quote, the evidence paints a clear picture. This was a consensual adult relationship that included role-playing, sexual language, and fantasy scenarios. So what happens then? Again, this is not the end of the story. Jane Doe ends up releasing an audio tape seemingly between her and Sharpe. And I'm going to explain part of what is heard on this tape. We can't play it for legal reasons, but here is part of the exchange, and this part is key. Again, this is from the audio tape. Jane Doe says, don't manipulate me. Sharpe replies, if you say that word one more time, I'm going to choke the bleep out of you next time I see you. Jane Doe pauses, takes a minute, and says, well, I don't want to be choked. And Sharpe replies, yes, you do. I don't think you have a choice in the matter. Now, to be clear, this tape may only be a portion of the entire conversation in audio, but this appears to be a portion nonetheless. Jane Doe's attorney, again, Tony Busby, described this audio as, quote, the contents of this clip are certainly not sexual. They are not playful. They are instead disturbing, aggressive, and dangerous. This audio paints a very clear picture of how Sharpe treated Jane Doe, leading her to escape from him by leaving Nevada and blocking all contact with him. And he added that they released this audio in response to Sharpe's lawyer, Lonnie Davis, trying to discredit Jane Doe by releasing all of these alleged texts, which, by the way, Busby says are basically irrelevant because they're all before the alleged assault. Okay, so now I want to bring on Mauricio Padilla, litigator, criminal defense attorney, to talk more about this. Mauricio, thanks so much for taking the time. Let's just start with the lawsuit and the allegations, suing for $50 million. Very graphic details about these multiple alleged sexual assaults and rapes. Your take just on the initial lawsuit and allegations.
I mean, my take on the initial lawsuit and allegations and the publicity that's come right after it. I mean, there's rules of ethics to prohibit people from trying their case in the media. And I think from the onset, both sides are engaging in releasing what could be evidence. And the rules of ethics from state to state vary, but they pretty much usually are concentrated on not releasing any information that could possibly affect a jury. And they're out there releasing.
I'm curious what those exact rules are. Destiny, what's the point of dropping all this shit in the public from the accuser's side? Why do they care if Shannon looks like a rapist as long as they get paid out by the judge? Because you think your case doesn't have any legs and you're just trying to get them to settle or something? I don't know what the pre-trial communication looked like, though. Like if these two people were in contact with each other, like counsel for both sides was in contact with each other. But
pages and pages of text messages. They're out there releasing audio. It looks to me like both sides are engaged in trying to litigate this in the media before litigating it in a court of law.
But isn't that the Justin Baldoni, Blake Lively effect, right? Isn't that what we're seeing now? It's the idea of let's battle this out on the court of public opinion, particularly, by the way, when you're dealing with such a public figure like Shannon Sharpe. The idea of if I'm fighting this in a court of law, but I'm also fighting this in the court of public opinion, if I can put enough out there to try to reverse the narrative, maybe not only I'll still retain my fan base, my career, but also it puts pressure on Jane Doe maybe to stop the lawsuit, or maybe not, because she fired back too.
No, I'm not saying that they shouldn't do it, because unfortunately we live in a time where if
here's the leaked audio.
You're just gonna get mad at, and you're just gonna hang up on me. So I feel like
I'm not gonna hang up on you. Here's what it is.
what does that even mean?
Nothing, Gabby. You want to be a dick to me now, so.
I don't want to be. Don't manipulate me.
Oh, no, have mercy. If you say that one more time, I'm going to choke the out of you when I see you.
Nice.
Thank you.
Well, I don't want to be choked.
Yes, you do.
You're just gonna
Remember, these are always anytime you hear a one-sided audio recording. Now, it doesn't mean that there's not something bad happening. It could be that the person is legitimately crazy, but one-sided audio recordings are always setups because one side knows they're being recorded, the other side doesn't know they're being recorded. It's very easy to say wind somebody up while you're recording on your side, and then edit out what you want to hear or whatever. Not to say that that's what's happened here. Maybe this person is just legitimately unhinged, but you can tell that, right? You can tell by the quality of the voice that she's just recording the conversation on her side and then talking in through the phone. So who knows what the full conversation was.
if you don't do that on behalf of your client, are you doing them a disservice? I'm just mentioning the fact, saying that they shouldn't do it, because unfortunately we live in a time where if you don't do that on behalf of your client, are you doing them a disservice? I'm just mentioning the fact that none of this is really allowed pursuant to the rules of ethics, but I understand why they're doing it, because nowadays pretty much the court of public opinion is dictating what happens in court in and of itself.
It's not just about the court of public opinion, though. From a celebrity point of view, the challenging thing about these lawsuits is that the damages that you could face in your career, oftentimes, depending on the level of the person, can outstrip any of even the maximum potential awards from any given lawsuit, right? So it might be the case that she could take a case like this to trial and win, and maybe it's the the jury rakes him over the coals and it's real bad, and it's like a $1 million payout or something by the end. It's a real big, she really got him. But that might pale in comparison to, personally, maybe he loses out on like a $50 million contract, or he suffered 8 figures worth of damage in terms of financial damages. So this is, speaking of personal experience, like this is why when you're a celebrity, the rules change a bit in terms of like, well, do you want to respond publicly or do you want to release stuff? Because it's not just about beating the case. It's about maintaining credibility in the eyes of the public. Otherwise, even if you win the case, like let's say you release nothing, you keep your lips, sealed the entire time, and then you come out, you win the case, all of the financial damage you might have suffered in the interim didn't make it worth it. You still lost out in the end,
So it's just part of litigating cases nowadays.
Are you concerned by the content, the value of those text message conversations? Does it complicate this case? Let me rephrase. Putting aside, assuming these really are the real conversations and the real messages of Jane Doe, you could say, she's talking about BDSM, tying up, dog collars.
Would he countersue then for damages? So my understanding is, and this is what makes it challenging, okay? You can't sue people for what they put in a lawsuit. You're not allowed to do that. So if somebody were to come out and just make an accusation about you, then, and you thought it was defamatory, whatever, you could sue them. But if people are making these accusations by putting it in a complaint, you can't sue somebody for what they put in a complaint. I don't think you're allowed to do that. So it's a way to, I think, defame somebody or slander somebody without being held accountable necessarily for it. Yeah.
Choking, and then she accuses him of sexual assault and being violent with her. Let me actually read you something from the lawsuit. Okay, so this is from the lawsuit. It says, a woman can say yes to consensual sexual relations with a man 99 times, but when she says no, even once, that no means no. Defendant Shannon Sharpe, a man who is accustomed to getting what he wants, completely fails to understand this basic concept. After many months of manipulating and controlling plaintiff, a woman more than 30 years younger than he, and repeatedly threatening to brutally choke and violently slap her, Sharpe refused to accept the answer no and raped plaintiff despite her sobbing and repeated screams of no. So you look at those messages, are they...
She, through her lawyer, released that audio. He can counterclaim her. It depends on, like, if the audio, because you could file exhibits attached to lawsuits, in which case... It's in the lawsuit. It's going to be part of the public record anyway, unless somebody like files to seal it or something, right?
They irrelevant?
If you establish a pattern of, S&M, a pattern of voluntarily submitting yourself to someone, to accepting, violence, to accepting as part of the norm of your sex life, then obviously that's something that could be used, because he's going to say, yeah, it was consensual. So when a jury's trying to analyze whether or not these acts of violence were consensual or not, they can obviously look to the history of the relationship and whether or not she's going to admit it. So now you put her on the stand and you're like, so you allowed him to choke you. You allowed him to hit you previously. And that was something that you guys engaged in, voluntary sexual behavior, and you found it pleasurable. And you did it for the X amount of months. But then on this particular day, you told him no. So it's something that it's fruitful to bring up at trial. I think they would be doing them a disservice if they didn't explore that more. And yeah, ultimately, what Mr. Busby's saying is true. A woman can say yes 99 times and say no that 100th time, but the historical behavior of accepting violence as the norm in your bedroom and in your sex life is something that a jury can look at to determine whether or not she did in fact say no, because he's going to say that she said yes. He's not going to admit that she said no, that he raped her.
No, I hear you. And I knew that he was going to get on the defensive. If you believe his side, right, that he's completely innocent, you get hit with this lawsuit, right? You want to defend yourself immediately. He goes out, he puts out this message on Instagram. Do you think he was advised by his lawyer to do so? Let's start there. And B, purportedly outing her, naming her name. Just the first name, and also what her apparent handle is or name on OnlyFans. Is that appropriate? That right? Again, he's defending himself, but name on OnlyFans. First name, and also what her apparent handle is or name on OnlyFans. Is that appropriate? That right? Again, he's defending himself, but she filed this anonymously.
Right. Well, whether or not his attorney advised him to do it, if he took those steps without discussing it with his attorney should be very upset at him doing something of that nature. I don't think that an attorney can counsel their client to disclose the identity of a victim in a sex case. So I don't think that his attorney would ever admit to taking those steps simply because there's laws to protect victims in sex crimes. But I understand why it's beneficial to his defense. I'm putting it out there. I'm saying who you are. I'm saying that you're an OnlyFans person. I'm saying that we were engaged in this voluntary sexual behavior where you possibly accepted money to do sexual things on camera or do sexual things for me. So it definitely benefits his defense in letting people know, listen, this is not the person that Busby's saying that it is. This is the person that I'm telling you who she is. So I think it's beneficial.
And to reverse it, I said this when I covered it earlier in the week. This lawsuit being filed by Tony Busby, he's got crosshairs on him right now. He filed a lawsuit against Jay-Z by a Jane Doe who claims that she was sexually assaulted by Jay-Z when she was 13 years old back in 2000. That lawsuit against him was dropped. The NBC did a report questioning the credibility of some of her claims. His attorneys came forward and said, no, we have proof that the people you say were there weren't there. And that lawsuit was dropped. He's now being sued. That Jane Doe's being sued. You would think, okay, if this happened, I'm going to maybe take a little step back here. But to go so public and forward with allegations against a high-profile figure like Shannon Sharpe, he must...
Do you think that her not going to the police since she claims that he raped her back in January is not helping her case? I don't think it helps, but she's just trying to get a settlement basically, right? These types of like super public things are you're just trying to get the other person to settle. You want a payday basically. The guy's obviously fucking loaded. She feels like she can cause enough the goal is like, can you ramp up the pressure enough and cause enough financial harm to the person to where it doesn't make sense for them to fight the court case? So I'm guessing my guess is they tried to haggle beforehand. People are saying that they were asking for 10 million beforehand, and I guess he felt like that was too much, and so now she's going public. And the dream is that at some point he's like, fuck it, this isn't worth it anymore for the reputational harm. I'll pay you off, basically.
Not only believe the account.
Oh, he offered 10 million. Okay.
Of Jane Sharpe, he must not only believe the account of Jane Doe, he must believe he's got the goods to back it up.
Definitely. And listen, when you're an attorney, you have wiggle room in the sense that if you have a client that's telling you what their version, you have to act reasonably, and you can't just believe someone that you may have knowledge that she suffers from psychiatric conditions, but you have a lot of leeway. Like, you have a client that's telling you, you're allowed to believe your client and you're allowed to litigate on their behalf. And obviously there's rules in place for a lawyer not to pied piper a complete myth and sue people without a basis. But, when you do have a client that's telling you what occurred, I think he has a lot of leeway in the way that he acts, simply because he has a client that's telling him, and he's allowed to believe that client. Now, there's limits, and apparently, regarding the Jay-Z, confronted with evidence that he couldn't refute regarding the lack of liability, then he dropped the lawsuit. If he's defending his own lawsuit, that's separate from this one. So I don't see why a guy like Busby would change his MO, so to speak. And
This guy, my guess too, because of the way these lawsuits are working, this guy probably gets paid on some kind of contingency as well. So whatever the Jane Doe can get as part of the settlement, he gets probably a fat cut of that. So I think that's why these people are usually so aggressive and go around seeing who they can sue for what.
And retreat, because at the end of the day, he's making money. He's making money. He's trying to make money, and he's got insurance to defend him of lawsuits. So I don't see why he would change.
Now I want to move on to the audio tape. This audio tape that was apparently released by Jane Doe's side. Now, again, this might only be a portion of the conversation, but it is a portion of this conversation, and it's important. You'll have Tony Busby saying this is nothing fun about this. There's nothing sexual about this. This is disturbing. This is him threatening to choke her and saying she's not going to have a choice. Whereas I imagine you're going to hear Shannon Sharpe say there's more to context to the conversation. Look at what our relationship was like. But this was another move in this chess game, releasing this audio tape. What's your take on it?
Well, listen, an audio tape like that is damning, just because if you're a man and you're talking like that to a woman, even if your defense is, you have to look at the totality of the circumstances. You have to look at the relationship that we had where she was voluntarily submissive to me. And then I was, in a position where we would obtain sexual pleasure from me being a dominant figure. That has to be his defense. But a lot of people would reject that right off the bat. Like, that's something that a lot of people are not going to stomach, are not going to understand. And he definitely has his work cut out in trying to explain to the viewing public why that type of language to a woman is appropriate. It has to be, his defense has to be that you're only looking at a small piece, but if you look at the entire relationship, that's how we would do it, and that's because she was submissive to me. People are going to reject that.
Now, I will tell you this. As this came out, I said to myself, how did they release those messages so quickly? They must have had it ready, right? You can't just have those messages. And I said to myself, did they know this was coming? Well, what do I come to find out? According to NBC, Lonnie Davis, again representing Shannon Sharpe, has confirmed that Sharpe apparently made a financial offer to this Jane Doe to try to settle this case before she filed it. In fact, while it seems he first said that it was tens of millions of dollars, then clarified and said it was at least $10 million. So the idea that if that's true, they tried to get to settle it, and then she files, and now they have their messages ready, what does that tell you?
That means that there were pretrial negotiations. They didn't offer enough. The other side feels like they can get more if they go, or they can pressure them for more if they go public first, and that's the plan.
Listen, I think that's part of what Busby has been doing historically. Like, they approach you and they tell you, listen, we have this. Let me know if you want to resolve this previously. I think if anybody looks at, like, the P. Diddy didn't do it, right? And then they filed against him and he settled the case in a day. We see the value of resolving cases. So I think it's on par with how Busby has been litigating his prior cases to give them an opportunity. When you look at it, yeah, settlement negotiations are usually privileged. If someone hears that he offered $10 million, what is a normal person going to think? He's guilty of something. Because people don't just, even if you're rich, don't go out there throwing around $10 million or millions of dollars to resolve cases when they're innocent. People are gonna associate that offer of settlement, which they probably shouldn't, but they will. They're gonna associate that offer of settlement with guilt.
At the time,
pre-trials. I don't know if a jury is allowed to consider that. This is what they offered pre-trial. That this is what they like. If both sides have counsel and they're engaged in these negotiations, I'm not sure if that's something you're allowed to consider. I don't think so, but would you ever settle your case? Fuck no. Absolutely not.
In this recording, I haven't seen Shannon Sharpe file a countersuit of any kind, but talk to me if this works. Could he countersue for defamation, or is there a litigation privilege, right? You're allowed to make claims against somebody. You're shielded away from every time anybody sues anybody, the other side will say it's not true. You can't just turn around and say it's defamation, right? I mean, could he sue for defamation?
Right. Well,
the two huge problems here is that, well, three huge problems. One is usually you just don't have a great case. I don't think in general judges like to see you suing somebody for suing you, unless it's like really bad faith, like bad faith enough for the other judge or the other attorney to get sanctioned. So, one, I think that's probably not the best idea. Two, it can end up making you look a lot less sympathetic towards a potential future jury or publicly, like, oh, the woman that's accusing him of sexual assault or rape is now he's suing her too. 1, 2, 3, and there was a third one. Oh, and third, he might just not have a good cause of action. So it might be like it just might be a bad countersuit. And so now you're spending even more money filing a countersuit that you don't even have a great, chance of winning. And then plus the other two negatives is just like not, A jury can't consider settlements. They just said it's confidential. Well, settlements between counsel. So careful, because if you say crazy shit before you've hired a lawyer or before any of those types of things have gone on, then those statements could theoretically, maybe, potentially, in other instances be considered. Just be aware of that.
Well, you're right. There is a litigation privilege regarding defamation actions. So I always tell people this when people ask me, can they sue? People can sue all the time. Whether or not it's going to survive a motion to dismiss, honestly, I've seen it in my career over 22 years. People sue for things that are ultimately going to get dismissed, and it doesn't affect their willingness to do it, their desire to do it. But you're right. There is a litigation privilege because I guess the mindset, the universal mindset is that you don't want to be...
Oh, then there's 4 is that she probably doesn't have any money, so it's not even worth it. Even if he wins, it's not like she's going to get paid a bunch, or he's going to get paid out or anything.
there is a litigation privilege because I guess the mindset, the universal mindset is that you don't want to be gagging people in a court of law. You want people to have the freedom to express themselves openly without the threat of litigation while they're in litigation. And that's the entire. So to answer your question, it seems like you're right. A litigation privilege does apply, but nowadays people get sued for all kind of things.
And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a countersuit because, again, his perspective is this is blackmail. These are false allegations. And by the way, what's the timing of it? And by the way, when we talk about Shannon Sharpe, he's a powerhouse in the podcast space. Hosts Club Shay Shay, Nightcap, tons of followers. According to Front Office Sports, he's expected right now to sign a new contract worth more than $100 million. Do you think that comes into play at all?
The problem with people that have those types of contracts is it doesn't have to mean that you're guilty or not guilty. Just the news in and of itself is going to affect your ability to get followers, to do your job, and to execute contracts. Now, if he loses a $100 million contract because of this, whether there's a litigation privilege or not, you can expect a lawsuit. Even if the standard for a motion to dismiss is lower than the standard for a motion for summary judgment, you could file a lawsuit. You could survive motion to dismiss, and routinely judges don't like to decide cases on summary judgment, and they often say that almost anything is an issue of fact for the jury because they know they're not going to get appealed when they make that type of ruling, and they like to kick it to a jury even if it is the type of case that shouldn't survive motion for summary judgment. So what I'm saying is that
So a motion to dismiss means that in the complaint itself, if you take all of the complaint to be 100% true, the complaint doesn't actually allege something that would qualify as something that would come under the causes of action that are listed at the bottom of a document, or at the bottom of a complaint. So let's say that you sue somebody for intentional emotional distress. And let's say I'm making some of this up, but let's say there are two elements to it. You have to be really mean to somebody and you have to say it to them verbally, okay? And then let's say the complaint says, my partner emotionally distressed me and it was so horrible, and what he did was every single day he took a brown marker and he drew brown all over all of my paintings, and it was the worst thing ever, and I hated this, and it was emotionally distressing me, and fuck this guy, and I hate him, blah, 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 okay? And let's say they filed that complaint. When you respond to the complaint, you can file a motion to dismiss, and you can say, we're filing a motion to dismiss and because this person has failed to state a claim. Basically saying that the cause of action that they've listed is, they said that it was emotional distress, but if you read everything in the complaint, they don't even say that I said something to them, which is an element for emotional distress. I'm making up what the elements of that crime are, but whatever, right? So it'll be dismissed. Now, after you go through the pleading stage and you get through discovery and all of that, at the end of that stage, before you go to trial, you can have a motion for summary judgment. Motion for summary judgment is kind of like a motion to dismiss, except the judge is allowed to lightly consider evidence in that case. So maybe in the complaint, this lady said, when he had the brown mark and he was drawing all over my paintings, he said, fuck you, bitch, I hate you, I'm emotionally distressing you. And maybe he says, I wasn't even in town when that happened, okay? Well, he couldn't file a motion to dismiss because whether or not you're in town, that's a fact to be debated, and judges aren't finders of fact. That's what a jury is for. But let's say in the discovery stage, let's say that you submit evidence and the husband shows like, look, I was literally in Iowa from May 12th to May 22nd. Here's like 15 restaurant receipts. Here's pictures of me with my family. And let's say that the plaintiff who filed the complaint doesn't respond with any evidence to that declaration. Then when they file for the motion to dismiss, the judge will look at this and go, okay, well, it seems like this is impossible. So for summary judgment, I'm just giving it to this guy because you haven't satisfied the elements of the claim, basically. Okay. So motion to dismiss is you fucked up real hard. Summary judgment is the evidence the judge is allowed to lightly consider probably means that there's not an actual complaint here right now. Okay.
Even if you have a clear defense, even if they don't have a good case, a lawsuit is still something that can be fruitful to either side.
Do you think this is going to end up settling, or is it now just too far down? How do you settle it without one side looking bad?
It's very rare that things go to jury trial. I think it's like 2% of all complaints filed actually go that far. So it's very, very, very rare, but...
The problem is when you're dealing with someone like him, that his livelihood depends on the way that people view him, on whether or not people reject him or not, whether or not people are going to tune in or not. Once we're at this point where me and you are discussing it publicly, and it's out in the media, then how do you really repair his reputation? We look at like Johnny Depp, how Johnny Depp had to spend millions of dollars to sue Amber Heard, and at the end of the day, the entire lawsuit was just for him to get back whatever reputation he had, so it wouldn't affect his ability to make money in the future. So, in my opinion, I think that the genie's out of the bottle, and resolving it at this point isn't going to do anything for his reputation and his career. But you never know.
Yeah, I'm sure. And look, there could be a lot more to this as this case ultimately progresses. Mauricio Padilla, thanks so much for taking the time. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
And that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you should get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.
Wow.